This special Dean Huijsen episode of the Managing Madrid podcast is brought to you by Hilton Miami Downtown. Real Madrid will be playing against Al Hilal at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. And if you're planning on making the trip to see that game, make sure to book your stay at Hilton Miami Downtown. This upscale hotel is centrally located in downtown Miami along the Biscayne Bay and is connected to the Metro Mover. It features a rooftop pool, as you can see on the screen, well-equipped gym, and spacious rooms. The elegant rooms at Hilton Miami Downtown feature floor-to-ceiling windows. And look, if you're planning on making the trip to see Real Madrid versus Al Hilal this summer for the Club World Cup next month, you got to book your stay at Hilton Miami Downtown. But if you're passing through Miami before or after, eternally, Hilton Miami Downtown is where you want to book your stay. Perfectly located, beautiful, easy to move around, given how connected it is to the Metro Mover. So make sure to book your stay at Hilton Miami Downtown. And with that being said, let's talk about Real Madrid's newest signing, Dean Huijsen.
Nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First-rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
What's up, guys? Kiyan Sobhani here, hosting this episode of the Managing Madrid Podcast. We're going to talk about Dean Huijsen. Want to give a shout out to Derek Ray and Ray Hudson, who are the two famous voices you hear in the intro of this podcast every episode. And I bring that up because Derek Ray, who you guys should know, and if you don't, you live under a rock. He is the voice of FIFA. He is the voice of the Bundesliga. He is covering games for ESPN. Nostalgic for me. I used to listen to him commentate Real Madrid in the 2000s. And he's been on this podcast. He is a friend of the show. He recently helped Mehdi Hassan, one of our writers and podcast hosts over on managingmadrid.com, to write a piece about Xabi Alonso. And if you go to managingmadrid.com, and this is particularly for you listeners who don't consume the written side of things, you should go to managingmadrid.com. It's pinned on the website. It's called Understanding Xabi Alonso, the Man and the Manager. Make sure you go consume that. Derek Ray has some great insight on Xabi Alonso, and Mehdi also got other people to collaborate with for that piece. So make sure to head on over to managingmadrid.com. And also, before we talk about Dean Huijsen, shout out to Moji Mates, moji-mates.com. Use code MM15 for 15% off. Today we're rocking Eduardo Camavinga, one of my personal favorites, 4 iterations of Eduardo Camavinga. Go to moji-mates.com. Use code MM15. And finally, our presenting sponsors, TAC Sports. Head on over to tacsports.ca for hands down the best academy in Toronto. Best soccer academy, basketball academy, swimming. If you want clinics and camps, especially summer camps coming up, it's May 19th. We're recording this, so you better get on it if you have kids in Toronto. tacsports.ca. Sign up your kids and make sure you do not miss the train on summer camps. Dean Huijsen. So you guys knew this episode was coming. It was, for the last week or two, an open secret that Real Madrid were signing Dean Huijsen, which was a great surprise for kind of the Madridistas, who had a bit of anxiety. Like, this guy is falling into our lap. He wants to play for us. He is really promising. We need a center back. Why are we not just paying this release clause and bringing him in? And a sigh of relief, obviously, I think it was Saturday, although I'm maybe getting the timeline wrong. It's been a blur the last few days. We made it official. It's announced officially. He'll be here. And he is ending his season with Bournemouth in a very professional manner. And Andoni Iraola had a press conference this morning for Bournemouth ahead of the Manchester City game tomorrow, which, by the way, you guys should all be watching because you get a chance to see Huijsen versus Haaland. And so we get to see some, our boy in action before he joins the club, for a couple more games. So we get to see that. It's a big game. Anyways, Iraola was speaking this morning in the press conference, just waxing lyrical and praising his maturity, and talking about how this whole for his age, he's just dealt with this transfer so gracefully, has been so professional, respectful to Bournemouth, just focusing on finishing his season. And listen, he is, like, by all reports, internally just giddy about this opportunity to join the club of his dreams. So I think this episode will be similar, but a little bit different to the Trent Alexander-Arnold episode we did a few days ago, where we spoke about Trent's weaknesses, Trent's strengths, and this surrounding scheme. And we also brought in Josh Sexton of the Anfield Rap. If you haven't listened to that episode, go do that. But this one is interesting and different and similar. Okay, so similar because I'm gonna talk about Dean Huijsen for a few minutes here before we bring on a special guest, Alexander, who covers Bournemouth regularly, and he's going to give us some insight about Dean Huijsen's season at Bournemouth and how he's developed. Um, Different in that I think weird maybe thing to say, and possibly dangerous in setting expectations and overhyping a player. But Housen doesn't really have weaknesses. It's not like, with Trent, it was a lot of like he is one of the greatest offensive fullbacks of all time. You got to take advantage of him. He solves so many problems going forward in the build-up phase. And he's got some defensive issues. We can mask it by doing this and that. Xabi Alonso can do this and that, etc. Housen is kind of just plug and play at this point. And I think what's most interesting about him is it's just been so quick. It's been such a meteoric rise. You know, he was with Juve playing less than a handful of games. Goes to loan on Roma, plays 14 games total. Goes to Bournemouth, doesn't start immediately this season. Injuries set in, and Housen starts due to the injuries and just is lights out great for the entire season. And it kind of came out of nowhere. Even if those who believe that, he was promising and has a bright future, he was one of the best center backs in the Premier League this season. And so it happened pretty quick. And, he's getting called up to the Spanish national team. And I think there's a lot of cases where there are just so many cases in Real Madrid history where they sign one of the best center backs in the world. And it becomes apparent quickly that that person was one of the best center backs in the world in a very organized scheme in a different club, and then comes here and it's just chaos and they don't look that way, right? So, for example, Walter Samuel is one of those guys. Fabio Cannavaro, I think, had a really good second season at Real Madrid. The first season, he looked like it was shocking to see a Ballon d'Or level player come in and just look so out of sorts. And obviously, Cannavaro has been open about this. Like, part of that is that it's just so chaotic at Real Madrid. You're constantly putting out fires, right? And Ancelotti says you need to be a pessimistic defender at Real Madrid, and um, there's a lack of organization. We'll see what that changes with Xabi Alonso, but we do know Xabi Alonso is going to bring the line a bit higher, have possession-based football. He is going to try to be a little bit more aggressive, less conservative. Um, and I think it's cool that we saw Dean Huijsen play in the Andoni Iraola scheme, which is also a little bit more daring. You got to be a firefighter in that scheme. And so it was great to see Dean excel in that department. So I think what's special about Dean is that, first of all, he is freakishly big, right? I think he's like almost 2 meters tall. And he doesn't lose agility with that kind of size. Sometimes the trade-off with someone that big is that, athletically they may not be as agile, but Dean is very agile, and obviously he's good in the air. He is one of those center backs who can provide you with goals. I mean, usually that's a bonus, but hey, any advantage you can get over your opponent, whether it's 1%, 2%, if you have a center back who can either score from distance or carry the ball forward or bring the ball out of the back or be a presence aerially in the box, it's something that obviously you welcome. So he has all those attributes. And the biggest thing about him was, it's been his ball playing. And I think, and I feel like I'm a broken record when it comes to this stuff, but with so much of the dialogue being in the last season about how much we miss Tony Cruz, we haven't been able to replace him, but I think it's a good start that you've been able to bring in ball progressors from different positions in Trent and Dean Huijsen. It's a really good start. And Trent can, as we discussed in the Trent scouting report, he can play as an inverted right back. He can drift centrally, and Dean obviously is very comfortable on the ball as a progressive passer, but as someone who can carry the ball forward. So I think what sticks out to me with Dean is that he's very mature. He looks like a seasoned vet. We have seen him play in a system that does require him to be very strong defensively and put out fires, and he's been very good defensively. And I think that's something that I asked about Alex Smith coming up in part two, because I wanted to hear his thoughts on that, because everyone's talking about his ball playing ability, but he's also a very solid defender. And so he has all that. And I think he's just a good mixed bag of attributes that you need as a defender at Real Madrid. And so, look, nothing is certain. Nothing is ever for sure. You're coming from Bournemouth to Real Madrid. The pressure levels are, it doesn't, I don't need to explain that to you. You guys get it, right? You understand how different it is playing in Real Madrid than Bournemouth. But based on what we've known so far, he's obviously very, very promising. So I just wanted to, put that out there. I think it's, um, it's one of those things that has been building up for some time now, this Dean Huijsen to Real Madrid. So in some ways, we were kind of prepared to talk about him, just like we were with Trent. But the fact that it's initially, I will just reiterate this one more time. The fact that the season is not even over and we already have three pieces coming in, it's really promising, and it was an appropriate and needed reaction so far. So, big ups to the board for responding appropriately to this disastrous season and bringing in some reinforcements. It's much, much, much needed. Um, yeah. So I don't know what else I really have to say. I mean, and we'll get into more on this Dean Huijsen signing in part two with Alex. But I did also just want to say, I'm not entirely sure if Alvaro Carreras will become official or not. If he does, we will cross that bridge when we get there, and we'll talk more about him. Personally, I'm not 100% convinced he's the right signing, but the other thing to note is that the left back market isn't great. So my rule for these things is basically, if Juni Calafat likes him, if Xabi Alonso likes them, these are two people who are 3 million times smarter than me, then we trust the process. Okay. Um, was there anything else I wanted to say about Dean Huijsen? Listen, a center back who can score, a center back who can actually create as a deep lying playmaker in some ways. He is a terrific long range passer. He's a terrific progressive passer. He's a terrific ball carrier. He can read passing lanes. He can block shots. He is great in the air to clear barrages of crosses that comes in. And, he's very, very good aerially. A good signing, possibly great signing, which I'm very, very excited about. And you think about like long range distribution, just to reiterate that point, he can hit passes into the final third, like few center backs can, and he can hit those balls over the top. And if there are teams that are going to play a high line against us, and we know we can think of a couple right off the bat, he's the guy you want to hit those balls over the top to Vinny and Mbappe. So great signing. I'm excited for it. Let's talk to Alexander and get some more insight on Dean Huijsen. All right, welcome everyone to part two of this special Dean Huijsen episode of the Managing Madrid Podcast. Right now, we have a very special guest, Alexander Smith. senior sports journalist at the Bournemouth Daily Echo. And I can't think of anyone better equipped to talk about Dean Huijsen. You're talking about somebody who knows Bournemouth in and out better than anyone, goes to every game, he's there at the pressers, has watched Dean Huijsen play pretty much every game this season, has been there the whole way, has seen his development from a bench player, in air quotes, but into a bona fide starter. And Alexander is going to share some of his time here today to tell us more about Dean. So, first of all, welcome, Alex, and thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Maybe we can start here because you were at Andoni Iraola's press conference today, and he spoke a lot about Dean Huijsen. So, can you just tell us what you took away from the presser today?
Yeah, well, Iraola was sort of very full of praise for Dean this morning. Sort of saying about how well he'd handled everything in sort of the last week or two, and how well it had been done. He hasn't missed any training sessions. He's been sort of the first to arrive and the first to get going, and he wants to play in the last couple of games. So he was full of praise for him, but also he was in no doubt that Huijsen can and will make the step to Real Madrid, and will continue to develop as a player, and has the ability and the mentality as well, to take that jump and go into one of the biggest teams in the world and really thrive there. He was absolutely adamant that they and everyone there were confident that that's what would happen, and full of praise for him and the way he's handled everything. Obviously, he knows La Liga really well, having played there for many years and managed there, and he knows that the league, and he feels that Huijsen can go and fit in and really thrive at the club.
How much would you attribute Huijsen's growth to Iraola himself? I mean, obviously, Huijsen seems like such a special talent that he would have thrived anyway, but Iraola obviously is a manager we're all familiar with. He's done some great things. How much do you think his influence helped with Huijsen's development?
Well, I think if you ask Andoni, that very question was asked this morning, and he sort of turns around and said, "Oh, well, he was already a very good player. We helped him along the way, but when he arrived, it wasn't like he turned up and he was rubbish. He arrived as a very good player, but I do think he's really helped Huijsen's development. Obviously, as a defender, admittedly not in the same position as Huijsen when he played. Obviously, that helps things. I think the way that he manages and the way that he wants a team to play has helped Huijsen to thrive. And sort of that's that ball playing side of things, which I think was already a theme. I think you saw it from some of his previous clubs, like that. I mean, that Roma goal that was just unbelievable, from picking the ball up and driving. And we've seen signs of that throughout the season, but I think he's been given license to do that under Iraola, and I think he's just instilled the confidence in him that he is. That he can do it, and he's not saying that I don't think he wouldn't have had that confidence anyway, but he's really hammered that home and been a big helper, I'm sure, both on the pitch and off it.
What was your experience tracking Huijsen kind of from start to finish this season? And just to bring some context in that question, so for us, he was on my radar only recently, and I would say around Christmas time, somebody asked us at the podcast, "Hey, what do you think about Dean Huijsen? Could Real Madrid sign him?" And at that point, I really didn't know anything about him. And I think it's like the rise seemed like so meteoric and quick, Alexander, because you think about he was at Juve, barely played. I think just a couple appearances, less than a handful. He goes to Roma on loan, plays his 14 times, and then comes to Bournemouth, doesn't start right away, because Bournemouth have this center back pairing already in place. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it was Zabarni, and Marcos Senesi. And I think it was a Senesi injury, right, that eventually brings Huijsen into the starting lineup. and then it just is lights out from there. So like he seemed to be this relatively unknown player, starts due to injury, and he's just been incredible ever since. So was that surprising to you? And do you kind of just could you remember just kind of tracking from start to finish his rise and how quickly he developed?
Well, he started. So I think before that, before seasonHis injury, which was right at the end of November against Wolves, Huijsen started 2 games. He'd started on the opening day of the season against Forest, played all of that game, and then started in the 3-0 defeat away at Liverpool, which obviously is a bit of a baptism of fire for him. But yeah, certainly watching him again at Forest and in the pre-season games, we were all very impressed. Certainly, I and a couple of the others have been very impressed. Had been very impressed with the way he turned up for such a young player. He slotted in and looked so natural playing at that level. So that game at that game at Forest, he was brilliant. Obviously, Chris Wood has gone on to score loads of goals, but sort of generally was kept pretty quiet by Huijsen and Sobhani. But then, yeah, I think after the Wolves game where seasonHis got injured, since he then came in from the start against Spurs, which was the next game right at the start of December, and then since that moment has played every single minute for Bournemouth in the cup, in the league, and just has been brilliant. I think a lot of it was, I think Sobhani's been almost as good or just as good at times, but I think a lot of the attention was on Huijsen because of how young he was and how it was his first season in the league. And his first season really playing regular football at the highest level. But yeah, he's just sort of from day one looked like he's fitted in and looked like he belongs at the level, and just looked so calm and composed. And I think that's the thing that we've sort of said was, when he's on the ball, it's not one that you look at and you sort of panic, and you think sometimes with some defenders you go, oh, you don't really want them to have the ball too much, but he just brings a level of maturity to his play, and whenever he's on the ball, you think he's not going to make a mistake. He's going to pick out probably a very, very good pass, or he's going to carry it into the opposition half and take it from there. But yeah, I mean, I think I said to a couple of other journalists not long after the start of the season that Huijsen didn't look like someone making his Premier League debut against Forest. He looked like someone who'd been there and had made 150 appearances in the league. He just fitted right in and looked so comfortable, which I think is massive testament to A, his ability, but B, his mentality and his ability to just slot straight in and hit the ground running.
So you've spoken a couple times about his ball playing ability and how comfortable he looks on the ball. This has been one of the big things that people have been talking about, right? Immediately when Dean Huijsen's name is brought up, the first attribute that is labeled to him is his ability to bring the ball out of the back, his progressive passes. I'm curious to get your thoughts on his defensive ability. Obviously, he's a defender, and obviously in modern football, you need to be great on the ball, and he is. And maybe if you could tie that into the way Bournemouth play. So with Real Madrid, it's a lot of chaos ball. So defenders, Ancelotti has always called it, you need to be a pessimistic defender at Real Madrid, which means you have to always be expecting something to be going wrong, and you need to be putting out fires constantly. And so, with Xabi Alonso, we expect that the line will be held high. So I'm curious to know if you can talk about his defensive side of things, and his strengths and or weaknesses there.
Yeah, I think I had a couple of connection issues there, but I think I got most of that. Yeah, I think he's defensively. I think you sort of mentioned Real Madrid. There's a lot of chaos. That's sort of how Andoni Iraola likes to play with his Bournemouth side. I think I was speaking to Kepa a couple of weeks ago after the Villa game, and he sort of the Villa game where Bournemouth lost 1-0, and Kepa sort of said to us that he felt that there wasn't enough chaos in the game, and they thrive off a bit of chaos, and it's those broken moments that they really need. So I think that will certainly moving into the Madrid team, where that again is something that is needed or is asked for, will certainly help him. And yeah, defensively, I haven't had any concerns with him defensively this season. Yes, a lot of people point out his ball playing skills as exceptional, but then I don't think defensively he's got too many problems, which is good. I think certainly his main strength is aerially, but at the same time his ground duels, and there have been a couple of fantastic sort of sliding blocks and sliding challenges that I can think of off the top of my head from this season that he also does very well at. So I think he's better than solid defensively, and well, he's a centre back, and that's what he does. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Certainly tomorrow night as well. I'm sure he'll play against Man City. He'll have to go toe to toe with Haaland and Marmoush potentially, and whoever Pep chooses to start. But that'll be a good test for him as well, and I'm sure Real Madrid fans will be tuning in to watch that.
Yeah, I was going to say that this is it's great advertisement, so everyone should be going in and tuning in and watching that, because at this point Real Madrid fans have nothing to look forward to, nothing to celebrate this season, but we're watching basically players like the players that were linked with, like Carreras, and obviously now officially Dean Huijsen is signed. I wanted to close with this question. When it comes to someone like Dean Huijsen, he's right now in that sweet spot of he's a hero at Bournemouth. He is nothing can go wrong for him. He just signed for a club that he loves, which is Real Madrid. He's going to play for Real Madrid. We're all talking about his ability on the ball, off the ball, defensively, his maturity, all that stuff. So just to kind of make this as objective as possible, and maybe just to set the expectations in check, or at least keep ourselves realistic about the player we've signed. If there's one thing that worries you about Dean Huijsen going to Real Madrid, what would it be?
I think it would be if he has a couple of off performances and perhaps a couple of people start getting on his back, whether he'll, as such a young player, whether he might take that to heart, but especially as it's at Madrid. I haven't seen anything so far to suggest that he would maybe crumble under that sort of pressure, but there's always that worry when you're such a young player with such a big price tag going to one of the biggest clubs in the world. There's always that concern that maybe the pressure will build, and it's pressure that he hasn't really experienced before. Okay, I mean, obviously he was at Juventus and Roma, which are two massive clubs as well. So I think that will help him, although admittedly he wasn't a mainstay at either of those. But I think that will. If I was to say to Real Madrid fans, just give him a bit of time. I know it's Real Madrid, and you often can't do that in football, but I think if he's allowed to settle in and get into his work without sort of that extra additional pressure, I have no doubt that he'll be an excellent player for Real Madrid and also for Spain. I think he's probably the future of the Spanish defence. So I have no doubt that he'll get there. I think there needs to be some level of appreciation of just how young he is, and he has only had one full season at one of the top leagues. playing week in, week out. So there needs to be that sort of a context to his performances, and which I'm sure will be excellent. But if there are a couple of off ones, that that isn't the Dean Huijsen that can be, and he will be an excellent player, and I'm sure will be one of the best centre backs in the world potentially at one stage. So yeah, I guess have a bit of patience with him.
Well, our expectations were high, and I asked you to bring some concerns, and I think you just set the expectations even higher now with with basically telling us that there's nothing wrong with this guy. So
Wow.
uh, we're excited. We're definitely
Well, yeah,
excited.
I think you're right to be excited. I do think he's excellent. As I say, I do think his centre back partner Sobhani has been just as good this season, and he's not that much older. He's only 22, but I think, as I say, sort of Huijsen coming into the team at age 19 and just slipping right in and looking like he's been there for 5 seasons, let alone half of one, was really encouraging. But as I say, it's only his first season. I'm sure that there'll be bumps along the road in his career. I'm sure, like there is for everyone. And he might have a drop off in form or something. But I think he'll be an excellent signing for Madrid.
Listen, Alex, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of your day with us, and I know you have a busy day. Listeners, you guys can follow Alex at Alex Smith Echo. And listen, I know you're losing Dean. How soon but given more of his actual scouting, hopefully you'll have another Dean or another great player to cover next season and counting. Thanks so much for your time, Alex. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.